My sister looked me dead in the eyes. She was holding a cider. She told me there was no room for me on this trip. She said I did not belong there, and my mother was standing 3 feet away. She said nothing. I did not cry. I did not argue. I just stood there in that lobby and made a decision, and that decision changed everything. Here's what this story is really about. It is about showing up for people who were never going to show up for you. It is about finally seeing what was always there. If you have ever loved someone who used that love against you, you already know how this feels. Subscribe. This story has one of the most satisfying endings I have ever told. I do not want you to miss it. I need to take you back to November. The lodge was called Halcyon Ridge, timber frame construction, vaulted ceilings. The kind of place that costs real money. My family had rented it for Thanksgiving week. I had not been invited through any group chat. I found out through a text from my mother, Diane. It said, "Just come, it will be fine." That was it, 4 words. I'm a furniture designer. I work alone. I run my own studio out of a converted warehouse space. At that point, I had 3 steady clients and 1 contract I was waiting to hear back on. I was not rich, but I was building something real. I drove 4 hours through early snow to get to that lodge. I walked in with my bag over one shoulder. The front desk clerk looked up at me and then looked at her screen. Her expression shifted just slightly. Something was off. Then I heard Jules behind me. My sister. She was already holding a spiked cider at 11 in the morning. She looked at me and said, "There is no room for you here, Sadie." She said it like she was correcting a mistake. "You do not belong on this trip." My mother was standing by the fireplace. She looked at the floor. What most people did not know was that Jules had not paid for that lodge herself. Not even close. Our Uncle Arthur had been quietly subsidizing our family for years. He covered 40% of Jules's mortgage. That was just over $1,900 a month. He paid the private academy fees for Jules's daughter, $14,000 a year. He sent Diane a monthly stipend of $800. He never made a show of it. He never asked for anything back. He had built his own company over 30 years, industrial supply contracts. Nothing glamorous, just decades of showing up. He was at that lodge too. He had arrived the evening before. He was standing on the second floor railing when Jules spoke to me in the lobby. He heard every single word. What nobody in that room knew was that he had been watching our family dynamic for a long time, and he had been waiting to understand what he was looking at. That morning in the lobby, he understood it. This was not the first time. 2 years before Halcyon Ridge, I had shown a piece at a regional design showcase, a commission piece. Solid walnut. Took me 11 weeks. Jules came. I know because Diane told me she was there. She never spoke to me that night. On the drive home, she told our mother that my work looked like something from a thrift store. Diane passed that along to me the next day. She thought I should know. The year before the showcase, I had missed Jules's daughter's birthday party. I was on a deadline. I sent a gift, a handmade keepsake box. Took me 2 days to build. Jules texted me one line, "She already has one of these." No thank you, nothing. And 3 months before Thanksgiving, I found out Jules had told a family friend that I was playing pretend with my career, that I would eventually need to get a real job. She said this to someone who then passed it to me directly. I sat with that for a while. My jaw stayed tight for most of that week. I kept working, but I kept thinking about that phrase, playing pretend. Comment trigger. I need to pause here. Has anyone ever treated your work like it was invisible? Like what you built did not count because it did not look the way they expected? Tell me in the comments. Standing in that lobby, I finally understood. The text from Diane was not an oversight. It was not poor planning. She told me to come knowing there was no room booked. She knew what Jules was going to say. She positioned me there. I had driven 4 hours, through snow, to be made a point of. I put my bag down. I looked at my mother. I said, "I am leaving." I picked my bag back up. I walked toward the door. Uncle Arthur caught me in the parking lot. I was standing in the cold with my phone out, looking for a car. He came down the side steps of the lodge. He did not hurry. He walked over and stood next to me. He asked me to tell him the exact words Jules had used. I told him. He nodded once. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "People who live on borrowed wealth are always afraid of people with real dignity. It makes them mean." He said it plainly, like he was telling me something he had known for years. Then he asked me one question. He asked if I would be willing to stay for dinner. I almost said no. I stood there in the cold and I genuinely almost said no. But something in the way he said it made me stay. He went back inside. 20 minutes later, a lodge employee came out and handed me a room key, private suite, 3rd floor, corner facing the mountain. I brought my bag upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed for a few minutes. I was not thinking about dinner. I was thinking about the drive home, about my studio, about the contract I was still waiting to hear back on. I thought about Jules calling me a failure. I washed my face. I went down for dinner. They had no idea what was coming. The dining room at Halcyon Ridge had long wooden tables and candles in glass holders. It smelled like cedar and something savory from the kitchen. Jules was already seated when I walked in. She looked at me for 1 second. Then she looked away and started talking to the person next to her. Diane straightened slightly in her chair. Nobody acknowledged the lobby. Nobody said anything about the morning. They moved through appetizers talking about the lodge decor and someone's recent home renovation. Jules laughed loudly at something. Arthur sat at the head of the table. He did not rush anything. He ate. He listened. He asked a few questions about the lodge history. Then the main course was cleared. He set down his napkin. He stood up. The table went quiet. He looked at Jules. He said her name once. Then he said, "I watched what you did this morning. I heard what you said." Jules smiled slightly, like she might redirect it into a joke. He did not let her. He said, "You performed status at your sister's expense, in a lobby you did not pay for." The smile disappeared. Arthur did not raise his voice. He did not look around the table for agreement. He spoke directly to Jules. He said the mortgage assistance would end at the close of the month. He said the academy fees for Jules's daughter would not be renewed in January. He said Diane's monthly transfer would stop as well. He said all of this in the same tone he had used to discuss the lodge history 5 minutes earlier. Jules's face changed in real time. The color drained out of it. She started to speak. She stopped. She looked at Diane. Diane looked at the table. Jules said his name. She said it twice. Arthur picked up his glass. He said, "Happy Thanksgiving." He sat back down. Jules pushed her chair back. She was crying before she reached the hallway. I watched it happen. I did not feel what I expected to feel. I felt something quieter than that. I kept my hands flat on the table. I finished my dinner. The next morning my phone had 17 messages. Cousins. An aunt I had not spoken to in 2 years. All of them telling me I should have stopped Arthur, that I had let it happen, that I was responsible for Jules's situation. I read every message. I did not respond to any of them. 4 months later, Jules's house went on the market. Diane moved into a 1-bedroom apartment 40 minutes from where she used to live. I signed a contract with a boutique hotel group, a furniture commission, 12 pieces, the largest deal I had closed. I was at my workbench when Jules's text came in. She said she was sorry. She said she had not understood what she was doing at the time. It was a long message. I read it twice. I typed back 2 words, "I know." Then I set my phone face down and went back to work. Here's the thing I want you to hold on to. The people who try to shrink you are not confident. They are afraid. Afraid of what it means if you succeed without their approval. You were never the problem. You were the proof. Second comment, trigger. Tell me something. If this had been you, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have given them one more chance? Drop it in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story right now, send it to them. They will know why. If this story gave you that feeling, that specific satisfaction of watching the truth finally land, subscribe, because I have more. Stories about people who were written off and counted out, who then made sure that was the last mistake anyone made. See you in the next one.